The mahogany-paneled room was suffocating with tension. Chandeliers glimmered above a long table where crystal glasses and expensive pens were set neatly, waiting. A hush fell as the lawyer placed a thick folder on the polished surface. All eyes shifted, not to the lawyer, but to the woman seated at the very end of the table. She wore no diamonds, no silk, no couture gown. Her plain gray dress looked borrowed, her shoes stuffed, her hands folded timidly in her lap. Her name was Clara Hayes, a woman everyone in that room had dismissed long before the will reading even began. The family of the late Edward Whitmore, a steel magnate worth billions, glared at her as though she were an intruder. "She doesn't even belong here," hissed Vivian Whitmore, Edward's glamorous niece, her diamond necklace catching the light. "He was being charitable, letting her clean the house. This is a family matter." Clara's face burned, but she kept her eyes down. She had been Edward's housekeeper, nothing more in their eyes. But Edward had often told her, "You'll see one day, Clara. They underestimate kindness." The lawyer cleared his throat. "Ladies and gentlemen, let us begin." As he read the opening lines, Vivian leaned toward her cousin Gregory, whispering loudly enough for Clara to hear. "Can you imagine a maid sitting at our table?" Gregory chuckled cruelly. Perhaps she hopes for his old cufflinks. Laughter rippled around the table. Clara sat frozen, her pulse hammering. She remembered the afternoons she'd brewed Edward's tea, listened to his stories, and read aloud to him when his eyes weakened. To her, he was not a magnate, but a lonely man who found comfort in her presence. To them, he had been a vault of wealth waiting to be cracked open. The lawyer adjusted his glasses. "Mr. Whitmore has left detailed instructions. First, to his beloved niece, Vivian, the lakeside villa." Vivian smirked, smug satisfaction spreading over her face. "To his nephew, Gregory, the collection of vintage cars." Gregory nodded, already calculating their worth. The distribution continued. Art, jewelry, stocks, properties. Each family member basked in entitlement, their greedy smiles widening. Then finally, the lawyer paused. The room leaned in. "And to my trusted companion, Clara Hayes." A silence crashed over the room. Vivian scoffed. Gregory rolled his eyes. Someone muttered, "Here it comes, the pity gift." The lawyer read, "I leave the remainder of my estate." The words seemed to hang in the air, ungraspable, before reality sunk in. The remainder, the mansions, the companies, the billions in assets not already mentioned. Everything. Clara blinked, unsure she had heard correctly. The room erupted. "This is absurd!" Vivian shot up, slamming her hands on the table. "She's a nobody!" Gregory shouted. "She manipulated him! She's a fraud!" The lawyer remained calm, sliding forward the notarized documents. All properly witnessed, signed and sealed. Mr. Whitmore was of sound mind. Clara's hands trembled. She whispered, "There must be a mistake." But it was no mistake. Edward had trusted her more than anyone in that room. "You think you can take our legacy?" Vivian spat, her voice shrill. "In your cheap dress?" Tears pricked Clara's eyes. She wanted to shrink away, to vanish. Yet deep inside, Edward's voice echoed, "One day they'll know the worth of humility." The lawyer unfolded another letter, Edward's final message. His voice softened as he read, "To my family, I gave you wealth in life, and you squandered it on vanity. You measured yourselves by titles and riches, but never by kindness. Clara, who came to me with nothing, gave me everything money could not buy: companionship, respect, and honesty. She is my true heir, not of blood, but of spirit." Gasps filled the room. Clara's tears spilled freely now. She remembered the night Edward confided in her, frail and tired. My family only sees me as a bank account, he'd murmured. She had simply held his hand. That moment, invisible to everyone else, had meant everything to him. Chaos erupted. Some threatened lawsuits, others stormed out, their heels echoing like gunfire on the marble. Vivian pointed a manicured finger at Clara. "You will regret this. You will never belong in our world." Clara rose slowly, her voice steady despite her pounding heart. "I never wanted your world. I only wanted to honor Edward." For the first time, silence met her words. The following weeks were a whirlwind. Newspapers splashed her face across headlines. Housekeeper inherits fortune. Cameras camped outside the Whitmore mansion. Strangers reached out, some congratulatory, many venomous. But Clara did not indulge in luxury. Instead, she visited Edward's study, running her fingers across the books he loved, remembering his laughter. She made her first decision as the heir, establishing the Edward Whitmore Foundation, a charity for underprivileged children. Edward had once confessed his regret at not doing more for those in need. Now Clara would fulfill that dream. Weeks later, Vivian appeared at her doorstep, no longer dripping in jewels, but desperation. "You don't understand," Vivian pleaded, her voice trembling. "This money, it was supposed to be ours. I have debts. I have appearances to maintain." Clara studied her carefully. For a moment, pity stirred. Then she said gently, "Edward gave you plenty, but he gave me his trust, and that is something you squandered." Vivian's eyes flashed with hatred. She turned and left, her heels striking the marble like thunderclaps. Clara, once invisible, now stood in boardrooms making decisions that shaped industries. Executives scoffed at first, but her humility disarmed them, and her quiet intelligence surprised them. She refused extravagant gowns, preferring her modest attire, though now perfectly pressed. The media called her the simple heiress. Behind closed doors, she wept often, over the cruelty she faced, over Edward's absence, but each time she rose stronger. Months later, at the unveiling of the Whitmore Foundation's first school for orphan children, Clara stood at the podium. She looked out at the crowd, children laughing, teachers clapping, cameras flashing. Her voice trembled, but she spoke with conviction. Edward believed that true wealth is not measured in jewels or estates, but in the lives we touch. He gave me everything, but I will spend it giving back. That is his legacy. That is his gift. The audience erupted in applause. Somewhere in that roar, Clara felt Edward's presence, warm and approving. Vivian and Gregory faded from headlines. Their wealth, once flaunted, dwindled. They had no legacy, no respect, only bitterness. Clara, however, was no longer the maid in the gray dress. She was the steward of a fortune, the guardian of a man's true vision, and the living proof that humility could triumph over arrogance. One quiet evening, Clara returned to Edward's grave. She placed a single white lily there and whispered, "They laughed at me, Edward. They humiliated me, but they know now. You made sure of that." The wind rustled the trees as though in response. Clara closed her eyes, tears slipping down her cheeks. But this time, they were not tears of shame. They were tears of gratitude. She turned to leave, shoulders straighter, steps firmer. She was Clara Hayes, the simple woman who had inherited everything. Not just wealth, but dignity, purpose, and a legacy that no one could ever take away.